Hello, everybody. Welcome to the formal relaunch of the DXdao community call. Hence, we're simply called DXdao Community Call number 1 today. We're going to be talking all about, we'll have a bit of a lighter discussion about this relaunch, introducing the bi-weekly community called POAPs, highlighting some important governance topics and a bit more. But let me give a bit of history to kind of kick that off, surrounding the call, of course. The DXdao community call initially spun out of weekly recap calls, which DXdao hosted, I believe, earlier in kind of the 2021 era. It covered kind of the events of the week / bi-week when we initially transferred it over to recap community call. Over the time, the community call completely replaced recaps. It integrated the elements of the recaps and kind of had both calls into one and transitioned to a weekly cadence. So it included kind of the extensive discussions and included it in a place where the community was most active here, which is great. The success was pretty dramatic compared to previous community efforts, and it was great to have a kind of running weekly community gathering, something that really wasn't held before in DXdao. But over time, in my eyes, the calls entered a sort of maintenance mode, mainly focusing on the recaps. I still believe it remains one of, if not the most powerful tool in the community, connecting the community together. But it wasn't exciting enough for those not already involved to participate. And there wasn't anything new to kind of latch onto. So in light of recent discussions on weekly call lengths, the recently passed phase 1 of the DXdao restructuring, which I'll talk a bit more in a bit, DX Voice took a step back. We reevaluated our public messaging, which is held each Thursday at 1500 UTC, I guess 1600 UTC now, but within that kind of window, depending on savings time. I think the community's been in a tough position as of late. There's been a lot of high stakes, confrontational conversations kind of held all around everywhere. By relaunching this call, there isn't a massive structural change, but I'm effectively placing a soft reset on the community and hope to grant kind of an alternative avenue for participation in the community. An avenue to express camaraderie and be a bit more involved with each other beyond this confrontational aspect of the organization. So today we're aiming to accomplish a few things with this call. Establishing the community call on a bi-weekly cadence, giving a bit more breathing room between these calls instead of weekly, which also grants space for DXdao to focus on operation decentralization on a 1 to 1.5 month cadence, kind of fitting in our live show in between. We'll be better fleshing out these schedules with events, activities, guests, and other actual reasons to attend that aren't simply recapping information, which, of course, as I said, is very, very important to me, but wanting to expand that outwards and kind of grow the community rather than maintain it. And then playing around with kind of live community interaction and voting. Some examples of this, which will not be here today, is kind of music voting, polls, competitions, some of the bare bones, fun little things that you can introduce to the call. Like I mentioned earlier, the call today is primarily introductory, just kind of aiming to inform about this new approach. And there's not an immediate massive structural change, but mainly start those discussions on where we can take that call as a community. I guess that being said, the first small and regularly occurring activity will be the running community-created POAPs. So each call, the community will collect some prompts. We'll generate a little bit of art through Midjourney version 4, which released actually 2 days ago, which will then be used for the imaging for the POAP and banners of the next call. So a very small, fun thing, I suppose, working together to make the art and the imaging. Number 1 still early, seeing here in the chat. So just for fun, here is an image of the POAP in the chat for today. This will be kind of the format of the POAP, maybe some slight adjustments going forward. But the idea is to work together, create some art that can be used for the imaging of the next call. And of course, that includes the banner. So for this first call, we won't actually be manually distributing. What we'll do is everyone that wishes to claim a POAP, we have some snapshots. Anyone that wishes to claim a POAP assertively, you need to leave a message here in the chat, participate in the chat in some way, and you will for sure get a POAP. We have snapshots, but people coming in and out will miss those snapshots, of course. So if you leave a message in the chat, we definitely will not miss you. We will be manually sending out those claims. We also have a snapshot of the call today. Cool. Yeah, before we hop into the rest of the agenda, have some kind of lighter topics. There is a bit of a heavier topic. I want to highlight the FTX situation. I'm sure everyone is mainly aware, but just to kind of quickly paraphrase, rumors emerged that FTX was insolvent. CZ of Binance drilled into the rumors, threatened to sell FTT off its books. A bank run started. Withdrawals were locked, halted. And then, I guess, as of recently, it emerged that FTX has a hold of roughly $8 to $10 billion. I think as of today, we found out that it's $10 billion that was lent to Alameda that was completely vaporized. And of course, Binance couldn't commit to the purchase, considering a $10 billion hole. There's a million more layers to this. It doesn't mention, I didn't talk much about Alameda, but I want to offer the stage to anyone that was interested in sharing thoughts, anyone that's been impacted, any broad stroke things on the current topic of the week. Pretty insane situation, maybe the biggest one, at least of the last years. I was impacted. I lost my $50 trading account, man.
I just assume those that are impacted are like not wanting to get up on stage and talk about it, because it's a shitty feeling and situation. So I feel for those people, of course. But yeah, I mean, I guess I don't know, people say you have the Mt. Gox, which I was not around for, or Black Thursday, maybe are the comps. I do think this is more than the Luna situation, Luna and Three Arrows, because those, seemed a little clowny, there was a little bit more skepticism that there was like kind of some shenanigans going, or a little bit there. But I think the widespread belief of the market and lots of the investors, obviously in FTX, and then all of the other validation that Sam went off to get in terms of donating money to to political candidates, the whole like kind of effective altruism thing. There was just kind of this widespread belief that this was a credible person and a credible like organization. And it's still so hard to figure out what is going on, but I think the only conclusion that can be drawn is that FTX misused customer deposits, probably lending to Alameda for FTT collateral. But I think just the basic using customer deposits is so egregiously crazy, illegal, like whatever you want to kind of say with that jump is just, and I think that's, I think you can get into a lot of different questions. People will take the regulation route of, this was like some offshore entity and it's not regulated, or others, which I prefer, will take, the DeFi route. Binance comes out and says they're going to do proof of reserves, right? And of course, what are they going to do proof of reserves? They're going to highlight things on the blockchain. They're going to try to have their book maybe open on the blockchain, but that's just what DeFi already is, right? So I think that kind of narrative, and this is the same thing really I think happened with Celsius and Voyager and BlockFi. There is a clear understanding in this space on what DeFi is and kind of the advantages of it and how it can prevent some of these black box incidents where just a misread of an individual or like someone can kind of mess up for everyone. And having the ability to have some more confidence because it's being run by smart contracts autonomously on a decentralized blockchain. I think that the appeal of that increases after this.
Everything reminds me of Quadriga, which is the first and only time Canada's been on the crypto map, with our famous rug pull.
But I think isn't it like the teacher pension funds or something invested in Celsius, and then another one invested now in Alameda or FTX or whatever. So
yeah, the Ontario pension teachers pensions. I think they were also in FTX.
Yeah.
Too,
one of these is like
So if you didn't invest in the two biggest scams, then you're like better than like the 8th or 9th largest asset manager in the world. So
yeah, I want to maybe add that this is, I think the reason this seems like one of the biggest events and like bigger than anything that I guess is like previously happened is because this guy was in Congress, in the U.S. Congress 2 weeks ago, and he was talking about exactly these things and why they are bad. And, then sort of like gets into this whole thing with, he wants to promote regulation that maybe not everybody wants or, stands behind. And this entire thing is like, I don't know. I felt like it's, how like those like gay senators and, they're like the most anti-gay stuff. So it's like this whole thing like felt like something like that. And this person who's like preaching against DeFi or all these things is actually the biggest crook. So yeah, I don't know. That's kind of that. And I feel like we haven't seen the extent of how like big this will be. I know there are already like a couple of funds that are essentially going under, from venture funds to whatever, people DMing me about the senators things. But this is going to be big. Like, it's going to collapse a lot of things. So I don't know. Be careful out there, I guess.
Just see Cantalon joining us on the stage. Not sure if you had anything to add to the FTX situation.
Well, when you asked for people to give a thought, I have a thought. I think I'll stay away from the made a big think that Powers and Nylon were just doing and just say this. One, we've all been there at some level. I've only ever used one exchange. Fortunately, that's one of the U.S. exchanges. It's one of the good ones so far, at least to today. And I have made the mistake of leaving assets on there for a period of time. I haven't made that mistake in the last year and a half. So I just think it's worth reiterating the idea that I think Andre Antonopoulos said originally, that you should use exchanges like you use a public restroom. You go in, you use it, and you leave. And I think it's worth reiterating that. And even though we're strongly decentralized, well, we're aiming to be a strongly decentralized community, etc. We want to be educating the new people who find our community that if you need to do fiat, you need to make an exchange, you go in, you use it, and you leave, but you don't ever leave assets on the thing. So that hopefully the people who've touched us in our lives, who we advise in crypto, cannot make the mistake that obviously a bunch of, it's very sad, a lot of people who I care about will find out, I don't know who they are yet, will have put some assets on FTX because they watch stupid Super Bowl ads, or they care about who sponsors sport teams and sports arenas. So that was just the thought I had. Let's use it as an object lesson to once again learn what we should not do, while at the same time all those meta things that Chris and Elon talked about certainly are very important to be thinking about, and I'm concerned as well. That's all. Just if you're there, guys, I too have had assets on an exchange too long, and I fortunately wasn't burned, and my heart goes out to everybody who was. And that's all I had to say.
Yeah, thanks, mate. Super appreciate having you here on the stage. Seeing Dave said we disconnected. I'm not sure if you can hear now, but I think the call is looking good. Okay, excellent. Not your keys, not your coins.
Yeah, I mean, just kind of the classic thing that people were saying, several years ago. It just kind of comes full circle, as Cantalon was saying.
It's the age-old adage. Cool. Anything else on FTX? We can touch on that at the end of the call if it emerges. But for now, let's move along the agenda with kind of the restructuring efforts at DXdao. I kind of want to give a brief high-level overview of how we got here and where we're going from here. I had a presentation that covered kind of the recap at the DX Retreat 2022. I think it was recorded. You might be able to find that on the YouTube channel for DXdao. Let's get started. Some months ago, I think the forum was very tense and confrontational, maybe more so than now. As I mentioned, it's been a little bit rough in the community as of late. Lots of aggression, awkward form dynamics, and eventually a restructuring and refocus proposal emerged. There was some broad community concerns surrounding the approach, and after some discussion, an alternative approach hit, which eventually passed on chain. Involves some budget and runway implications, better involving DXD within governance, increasing accountability structures, and a tighter focus on financial justification of initiatives. It aimed to accomplish this through a multi-phase approach. Phase 1, low-hanging fruit, passed in early October, late September actually, and kind of tackled the least confrontational signals. Just seeing FTX begins processing withdrawals. Some LARP in the chat. Sorry about that. Phase 1 passed early October / late September. Had some least confrontational signals, including monetary related stuff, some budget targets, etc. Nothing really insane from the aspect of what it was actually accomplishing, but setting these guardrails in place, I think, was actually very important in kind of guiding the future of discussions. Phase 2, accountability, access, and anatomy, parentheses, structure, of course, is currently in a voting stage in DXdao governance, which includes a few directional decisions, a 6-month budgetary cycle based on squads primarily, of course, budget going directly to the squads rather than governance focusing on every single individual contributor proposal, an exploration of accountability councils or other steps between execution and governance, a priorities board for use in determining direction of product efforts, establishing an overarching vision as enabling community freedom, and pointing the focus of DXdao project efforts towards a decentralized pipeline for communities and the creation of a flagship product combining product efforts. So, of course, there's a lot to kind of unpack and really contemplate there. And I think going forward, there's going to be a lot to consider during phase 3, which is called stepping back and pushing forward. I kind of put some of my personal interpretations of the goal in the initial thread, such as further justify individual aspects of the product suite, which of course we're moving in that direction. In phase 2, transitioning or letting go of talent in positions no longer deemed valuable to new prioritization, identifying areas of financial strength, capitalizing through additional spend if necessary, trying to reach consensus on value accrual mechanisms for DXD, and reopening new contributor intake for in-demand roles. So all these things kind of working together, of course. I feel like the pipeline has been moving along quite well so far. Everything seems to be falling into place in a very healthy way. For phase 3, there's kind of a further focus on justification through the existing budget and leveraging the findings of phase 2. Transitioning or offboarding talent was the word kind of used in the initial proposal. But I think the most important thing is understanding what we're trying to do and how we get there. And I think phase 2 was kind of trying to figure out what we're trying to do, and phase 3 is going to be how we get there. It's going to grant avenues to better identify our competitive moat, how we can dedicate resources to returning value to DXD. So I think a lot of very, very important and relevant discussions we had on the side of DXdao. If you're a DXD holder, if you're a rep holder, someone that's just interested in the ecosystem, please pay attention to the forum. There is a live signal proposal vote for phase 2 on Gnosis Chain. I will leave a link to the forum discussion here in the chat. I'm not sure if anyone had any thoughts on restructuring or anything to add to that before we move along with the agenda.
Yeah, I think Keenan has been doing a good job of kind of putting forth these ideas and gathering consensus on it. And yeah, I think, as I said on the governance call yesterday, this is like crossing the river by feeling the stones underneath. And yeah, I think that's a good approach.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate the kind words as well in the chat. Cool. Yeah, make sure to pay attention if you're involved in DXdao. Very important discussions we had, kind of crafting the DAO towards a future focus on the product side, on just a general direction. So please pay attention. And the last thing I actually have on the scheduled agenda before we get into the generative art, and I have a bit more context for that, is a quick attention call for Swapper and the future of the Swapper emissions. It's been, I believe, 2 weeks now since the last campaign finalized on both Arbitrum and Gnosis Chain, where there was a new post that went up on the future of Swapper emissions thread that covered what the actual next steps will be. I think broadly there was a consensus that we won't know exactly what to do in the immediate. So how do we kind of grant some space for Swapper to thrive through its key pairs and also support the Arbitrum Odyssey, which is a massive event for both Swapper and DXdao. So the proposal, or not proposal, of course, but the kind of off-chain signaling that we've seen in the forum and in the chats of Swapper is how we can do that. And the 3 months interim Swapper campaigns appear to be the popular choice, utilizing the entire unallocated fund. I think there's a couple other ideas that were shared, and the natural next step, of course, being a snapshot vote using this information, aiming to have, of course, assuming it was utilizing the unallocated fund to deploy campaigns, aiming to have that done an additional 2 weeks after this date, which would align with a 1 month deferral from the last discussions. So looking to have a snapshot vote go up here in the short term. There's a lot of discussions to be had, of course. Any additional thoughts from anyone here in the community that hasn't seen the thread already? Take a look at this thread. Includes the thread polls here, unfortunately, which are now closed. But of course, you can kind of see the signal, and if there's anything else to signal before going to a snapshot vote, now is the time to do so. I'm not sure, Chris, I think you are also close with this process. If you have any thoughts, particularly you had some thoughts on the GNO pairs, that might be good to kind of communicate here.
Yeah, I was actually looking for the link that you just shared. I thought there was actually kind of a nice couple comments that were good on, in general, what's the kind of approach with these farms, and I think we do want to be much more strategic about it, given that there's been so much token emissions already. So I think each of the pairs are very strategic. So like the GNO, for instance, obviously Swapper it's on a couple of networks, but it is its largest network is Gnosis Chain, where it is also the largest AMM there, and GNO is the token of Gnosis Chain. So I think that's an important strategic pair to have. Plus there is some large liquidity providers there. That also applies to Cow as well. We've worked with Cow on the initial Cow token launch and farming on Swapper. There's also been a lot of integration with CowSwap on Swapper, and as well as CowSwap on with DXD buybacks and other treasury moves. So I think there's a lot of strategic opportunity there. And so I think those are the reasons to do those, and maybe the reason not so much to do, say, XDAI WETH is because DXdao is providing liquidity on that. And so it's kind of already it's already the largest pool on Swapper because of DXdao's liquidity, and I don't know what additional emissions would help.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you for the thoughts, Chris. Like I mentioned, moving to a snapshot here soon trademark. Of course, don't have an exact time, hoping for this week, maybe early next week, but a bit more context in the forum coming. So pay attention to that thread if Swapper is relevant to you. Cool. So that does get through my agenda for the day. Like I mentioned, a bit more of a smaller contextual call to kick off this relaunch. And of course, it's a softer kind of relaunch to kind of put the mood towards community and how we can kind of have more fun and have more camaraderie, grow, and of course, grow this more fun aspect of the community away from a lot of the hard discussions. Of course, isn't to silence or push away those hard discussions, but instead have an alternate avenue of participation where community members don't feel the need to be in the spotlight or anything to that matter. So as you saw today, of course, highlighting some of these hard discussions, but also alternate avenues kind of going forward. So last but not least, the fun aspect of the day, very quick, and we'll do this each week. There's kind of two ways that we could approach this. We'll do one for the day and commit to the other if this has some challenges. But that is actually the community-generated art / POAPs / branding for the next call. So as I mentioned at the beginning, for those of you that are late joining, each of these calls will now have a community-generated aspect where the community will work on a prompt together or in tandem and have that result in the artwork and branding for the coming call. So I'll just share the POAP and banner for the fun here. And this was using some prompts that I shared in the initial thread, which I'll bring up here as well. Blue elements, majestic blue galaxy, all the fun kind of prompts. But I think the idea is kind of to be a little bit more relevant and on topic. So today, what we're going to do, instead of doing a live kind of generation, what we'll do is anyone is welcome to leave prompts here in the chat. I will use a collection of those prompts and, of course, just describe something, and I will generate it. I'll use that.
When you say prompt, is that just like word?
So basically,
or just like start screaming random things, or
word or phrase is good. Insolvent is fun. Basically, how Midjourney works, and this is the context I'll give. And I see Zet here, who's a bit of a AI aficionado as well, if you wanted to come and speak to it. But it's a kind of emerging technology for AI generated art. Basically takes text and creates imaging for it. Midjourney is one of the leading AI generated art kind of examples, I would say. They are less of a take a specific thing and demonstrate it, and more of creating something artistic. So I mean, like just for example, just open the Midjourney server, and the very first thing, it's a social tool, so everyone can see what everyone is generating. This is like the very first thing I think I see here using this prompt. So it's very artistry focused. Just share the prompt. The main thing for the generation aspect here is that we just want the prompt. So like, for example, the prompt element of this this segment here for the desert landscape is desert landscape with dunes and hills blown by the wind. And then there's kind of describing elements that you're welcome to share. So for example, squirrel, you could say like digital artwork. The rest of it and like the mood and feel, I'll kind of put together myself. And then once we have a collection of these, I will generate and make a couple of nice pieces based on what we have here, and we will leave it up to a vote. So we'll have emoji reactions, so which we think is the best representation of the prompts, and that will be what was used. Sorry, just reading the chat. So the idea is the prompt, and of course it can be something as simple as insolvent, and Midjourney will run with it and take its personal interpretation of what that word means. It can be a little bit more specific, like in this example, desert landscape with dunes and hills blown by the wind. Whatever that is, it doesn't really matter. I'll be running through all of them anyhow, and we can do a little vote on them in the next days or so. And I'll also be offering my own as an FYI. Just seeing Cantalon's text here about Ukrainian refugees into Denver. Yeah, mad respect, mate. That's incredible. I'll use this as a prompt and see what we get. Yeah. So any prompts, anything interesting, of course, related to current discussions, topics. Insolvent is fun. Anything else kind of surrounding that, feel free to put it in the chat. Can't offer rewards or anything, but thinking about ways to highlight those that win the competitions, in a sense that, DXdao community call art creator, kind of POAP, something like that is definitely on the agenda for those that win. So we'll start with that kind of approach. Contagion, lengthy prison sentence. We'll start with that approach, and we'll do a bit of a vote. I'll call a little ping to call participants here in the coming days for a vote on the best art. And that art will be used going forward, and of course the winner will be credited as such. The alternative way of kind of going through this, and we'll try this maybe next time and see which one sticks the best, is doing a bit of a live art generation sequence. Of course, the process can sometimes be very quick, sometimes be a little bit more lengthy. Sometimes you get fun prompts right away, sometimes you do not. So we'll start with this kind of refining and making a collection of fun pieces, and then next week we'll do a little bit of a live, sorry, not next week, next week, bi-weekly cadence now. We'll do a bit of a live kind of generation event and work through some prompts together. I'll share my screen. We can all run through some fun stuff as a group. So yeah, any final prompts, feel free to put here in the chat. As I mentioned, a bit of a quicker contextual call. Really appreciate everyone showing up here, hoping to provide. I am not running Midjourney locally. I'm a paying member of the Discord. Really thankful for everyone here, hoping that we can provide an avenue for a bit more fun and kind of camaraderie throughout the community, starting, of course, with smaller things, but moving up to kind of larger things such as events, even some fun stuff like trivia we can definitely do as a group and maybe have some small rewards. So looking for a little bit more fun to be had around here. I'm not sure if there's any final thoughts, anyone on the stage. Otherwise, leave your prompts here in the chat. We'll share more and give a little ping when it's time to do the vote. And of course, for those of you that missed the start of the call, POAP for this call. All you need to do is be in this call, but in case you missed the snapshot, yes, this is really good as well. Just quickly on the POAP side, if you missed the snapshot, all you have to do is leave a message in the chat saying that you were here within the hour of the call. So that's 1600 to 1700. If you have a message in this chat, you will get a POAP mint link sent to you, which needs to be claimed by tomorrow. What Zet just shared here in the chat is the basically, I think this kind of started with I see the GIF okay here on Discord, Zet. Basically, I think this kind of started with Reddit. They did r/place. It was an April Fool's joke in 2017 or something. It was quite a long time ago. They did a second version last year, and now I think it's POAP art is the name. Basically, certain POAPs were kind of given the opportunity to make artwork on a wall, which is a pretty cool use case of POAP, I must say. And so anyone that had a certain POAP, I think it's like DevCon, maybe Nimi related stuff as well, was able to kind of come and place pixels and coordinate community art on a canvas. You can see the final picture here, and of course the time lapse of the art Zet has posted. You might have to open it if you're on mobile, but it shows a little time lapse of how the art evolved. We see a little DXdao, little Swapper, little Limo, little Nimi. Good to have everyone represented. Cool. Yeah, I'll keep my eyes out for any additional prompts here over the next 20 minutes or so. Anything that you want to add, keep it simple, keep it complex, up to you. I will work with it, and we'll do a bit of a vote, maybe even a bit later today or early tomorrow. Just a simple community reaction-based vote, so nothing super complex, just for a bit of fun here in the community. Cool. Well, thank you very much, everyone, for attending. Like I mentioned, hope to move towards a bit more fun in the community. See the updated time lapse, stuff like this, I think would be good to kind of coordinate together and revolve around the community for. So moving towards that, starting with this call, of course, for the POAP, leave a message in the chat here. You can also message what for directly if you would like to. Cool. Yeah. Thank you very much, everyone. We'll see you in 2 weeks for the next DXdao community call, and we'll have some updated art and another POAP for you. Cheers, everyone.
Thanks, Keenan.